Joe, you ready? No, he gave me the thumbs up. Ready? Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is March 14th, 2023, and this is our RCSD regular board meeting. I'd like to start with a roll call. Sorry, Carolyn.
Thank you.
I'll wait for you.
Roll call. Director Barkey,
Here.
Director Shade, President DeMarco,
Here.
Director Maynard,
Here.
Director Searles.
We haven't heard them. I'm sure they're on their way. Starting our meeting a little bit early. So next, Pledge of Allegiance. Can Director Maynard lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. All rise. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So we have two presentations, one about 10 or 15 minutes, and the other one rather longer than that. And that was the reason starting the meeting early. So, Mr. Mendoza, can you introduce our first presenter?
Sure. President DeMarco, members of the board, can you hear me? Am I on, Josh? Let's try it again. How about that? Okay, here we go. Let me work with it. President DeMarco, members of the board. First up, we have Orange County Public Works Representative, Ms. Lopez. She will be providing a informational, I guess, overview of the upcoming transportation coordination regarding ADA transition plan that will be upgrading our areas within our district. With that, Ms. Lopez.
Right there, yeah. Yep. Yeah, that'll come up. There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariana Lopez. I'm the Active Transportation Coordinator at OC Public Works. Thank you so much for being here, even with the rain. So we're here to talk to you about the ADA transition plan. It focuses on sidewalks, pedestrian push buttons, crosswalks, ramps, and driveway approaches and signals. So I'm going to have Matt and Shri take over from here, but thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at the end of the presentation that they're going to give. So without further ado, this is Shri. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. I know that you're going to be on TV this way. Well, either way, normally you face this way, but as long as we can get you on TV, podium straight ahead. Okay, yeah.
This way?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, President DeMarco and directors. My name is Shri Chakravarti with Kimley Horn. We're working with County of Orange Public Works on the ADA transition plan, the Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan. What this project is, I think like Ms. Lopez mentioned, the project focuses on upgrading sidewalks, push buttons, driveway approaches, signals, as well as ramps throughout the unincorporated county area. Let me see if, there you go. So this is the project area that's the focus of our study. The areas in orange are the unincorporated areas that our project area consists of. The idea here is we will be getting input from all these unincorporated county areas within Orange County to inform the ADA transition plan that we're going to be preparing. So goals and objectives of the plan, there are several. First and foremost is to improve safety, accessibility, and connectivity conditions, and encourage participation and solicit feedback from the public and disabled community, and that's a big goal for the County of Orange Public Works group. They wanted to come to the community to meetings and events like this to solicit feedback. As part of this, we also have boards over there to provide more information. We also have surveys that we've put over there, the sign-in area, that we would like to get input from the public. Along with the hard copies, we also have on the survey QR code. So if you prefer to provide online survey, essentially indicating improvements that you would like to be made within the community related to ADA, and we would love to get your feedback on how things are and where improvements would need to be made. And then the third goal there is developing a comprehensive data-driven assessment, identifying policy, physical barriers, prioritizing project recommendations, ultimately informing the 7-year CIP, that's a capital improvement program for the County Public Works. This ADA transition plan will serve as a guide, a support, and reference point for our communities. And at the end of the day, we also want to identify funding sources for all the improvements that are identified, so that the county can move into the implementation portion of the plan. Next few slides, I'll quickly go through background on ADA, what it is. Title II of the American with Disabilities Act covers state and local governments. That's enforced by Department of Justice, as well as the U.S. Access Board develops and maintains those ADA standards, what they mean, what the requirements are, and how they need to be implemented. These are additional information pieces for the Title II requirements. One is developing a grievance procedure if there's any issue related to ADA, how the public can provide their input. Also designating someone as an ADA coordinator, that's a requirement, and performing a self-evaluation for every 3 years, as well as developing a transition plan for achieving program accessibility. Diving into the ADA transition plan component, these are the requirements. I covered the first two parts, ADA coordinator and the grievance process for the public, but also covers a few more points, such as developing and updating design standards for the ease of the community to, while they're using the sidewalks, curb ramps, and other facilities. Providing notice to public about ADA requirements, identifying public involvement opportunities, and then also the transition plan will include identifying barriers to access. I'm going to pass this on to Matt Stewart to cover the next few slides, and then we'll open it up for any questions.
So zooming in on the map that we showed earlier, the study area consists of 360 miles of sidewalks, over 6,000 curb ramps, and 760 pedestrian push button and traffic signal locations. So these are the specific types of infrastructure that we're looking for the community feedback from Rossmoor. A project timeline. In 2022, we completed the self-evaluation where we visited all of those sidewalks, driveway approaches, curb ramps, and traffic signal and pedestrian push buttons, and graded them based on the ADA standards. The current phase that we're in is the public engagement and communication. So as Sri mentioned, we're going to all the 26 unincorporated communities and requesting your feedback on overall and general compliance, and also specific locations where you have identified concerns. So the next couple slides, I'll be walking through how both you and your community can provide this feedback. So we have the online map and survey, which can be accessed by scanning that QR code. Secondly, we have a paper survey over at the table that people can fill out tonight if they're interested. And we do have a website as well with a bit more information on the project. So once you scan the QR code, you'll come to this map with each of the unincorporated communities color-coded. A pop-up will show up explaining the project and how to use the platform and provide your feedback. There is a language feature so you can translate the text into dozens of languages. And you can see in the screenshot the specific types of feedback we're looking for are related to curb ramps, push buttons, and sidewalks. So this slide shows how that feedback can be provided. So once you choose either a line comment for a sidewalk or a point comment for one of the other facilities, you can drop it on the map exactly where you've had concerns. And then you can write a comment with as much or little detail as you'd like to provide. The more the better. And then we do want to highlight a few upcoming events that are planned. So this Friday we'll be at the OC Parks Farmers Market at the Mile Square Regional Park. Next Monday we'll be presenting to Ladera Ranch Civic Council, and we'll be planning more events where we're hoping to connect with the community coming soon. So the project contact information is me. My email address is on the screen. The project website is on the screen as well. We encourage you and your community to find out more information about the project later on and scan the QR code as well. So at this point, yeah.
Awesome.
we'll take-
So before we open up, if anyone has any questions, I have so can you give us an example as to what a resident of Rossmoor are we recommending to you, because aren't all of our curbs supposed to be ADA compliant? So my first question is, are all of our curbs, the corners, ADA compliant right now? Do you know that if they are or not?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's pretty compliant compared to some of the other unincorporated areas.
Okay. So residents could, let's just say they live on a corner and they don't have a ramp. They can use this to help guide you guys saying, hey, we would like to have a ramp here. But isn't Orange County obligated to put a ramp there according to the federal government? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Director DeMarco. There may be locations where currently the ADA facilities are not there, which is what we would want to hear from the community, saying, there's a curb ramp missing here, or the sidewalk is lifted here. The pedestrian push button is not working or missing.
Okay.
We did collect a significant amount of information in our previous phase, which will help inform this, but there's also a component where I think if the community has firsthand experience on where things are missing, it's definitely more helpful and informs the process better. And also, it'll also sometimes allow those locations to score a little higher.
Got it.
So that's kind of the process we're looking to make sure that we are capturing not only the data, but also the feedback from the community.
Can you go over then also what's under, just reiterate what's under your ADA? So, curbs but you said approaches, driveway approaches, so can you kind of elaborate on all the areas that are under this ADA umbrella?
Absolutely. So the areas that are in the ADA umbrella are curb ramps at the corners of the intersections, sidewalks, any of the sidewalks that you'll see within the public right-of-way. So the focus is mainly within the public right-of-way. That's the County of
So
Orange.
missing sidewalks or
Missing sidewalks, broken sidewalks, lifted sidewalks, you know, if the slope on the sidewalk, the cross slope is too much, I mean, things like that, I think would welcome that information. And then the traffic signals, you have those push buttons to cross the street. You know, if those are non-functional or missing, we would want to know that. And then we mentioned driveway approaches because so usually driveway approaches are on, like, contiguous with the sidewalk, but there would also need to be like a path for ADA travel at these driveway approaches because the driveways are sloped. So if there are areas that, you know, the community feels that there needs to be a flatter area behind the driveway within the public right-of-way, that we would want to know.
Got it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It
That last one
clarifies it.
confused me. Can you explain that again? So the access to the driveway, if there's too much of a slope, it needs to be remediated? I'm a little confused. I need a visual or something.
Yeah, so here in this slide, the picture on the left, the far left, you'll see the driveway approach leading into a property. You know, as you travel along the sidewalk, there is there's a flat area, and then on the driveway there's a little bit of a slope for vehicles to get into the property, and then you get the flatter area on the sidewalk. So I think
I get
kind
it
of
now.
understanding that.
I get it
So it's
now.
not really the driveway approach itself?
It's the sidewalk.
It's the sidewalk?
Yes.
Being at an
Okay,
angle. Okay.
that makes it
Yeah,
much clearer.
yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Earlier, I heard you mentioning that part of the process is you're looking for funding? Did I hear that correctly early on when you were speaking?
Yeah, so part of the ADA transition plan is also looking for funding opportunities, because as we identify these projects, curb ramps, sidewalks, where it needs to be implemented, I think there also need to be understanding of where that funding will come from. There's a lot of funding opportunities that are available out there through the infrastructure law and through the state, obviously local funding, but in the plan, in addition to identifying where all the improvements need to be made, there's also an assessment we will be doing to include in the plan of what are all the funding sources that might be available to implement this.
And if you don't find enough funding?
I think so. I mean, the idea is to prepare this program
Right.
to start preparing for, this kind of helps this program be eligible for different types of funding. So I'm sure, I don't know, maybe, this might be something that the county public works could answer. There's usually a set-aside budget for any and all types of capital improvement projects.
Yeah, I understand the budget, but when you say you're looking for funding, that's a little scary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonica Coley. I'm from Orange County Public Works. So when we prepare the plan, we have identified areas that we're ready to submit when there is grant opportunities that open up. We have something that's ready to go. We know the community supports it. It's an area that needs improvements, but in addition to the grant funding, we have an annual ADA improvement program at the county where we budget funds to make improvements throughout unincorporated Orange County areas. So currently we're addressing North Tustin, and we have plans to address other parts of the county over the years. And the grant funding is meant to supplement county funding.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, I don't know tax law and stuff like that, but is there a world where this all of a sudden magically appears on our property tax as an extra easement and funding?
No,
I just want to make sure.
no.
Sometimes agencies do funny things.
No, so when we get into the project implementation phase, we would be reaching out to the community again when there's a proposed plan, when there's a planned project, to make sure all the residents, all the community schools, everybody is aware of what we're planning. So we'll be reaching out again in the future for more feedback.
So right now, you're just assessing, like, how many curbs, how many here in Rossmoor and other unincorporated islands, so you can put a package together to see what the scope of that is, and then put together a funding mechanism
Yeah, so
internally, externally?
We've done the assessment. We did the assessment a couple months ago. So now we're at a point where we can look at the data countywide and come up with projects. So as part of the community, as part of us coming out here, we want to hear from the community and have areas where we know the community is actually looking for projects, for us to implement projects. So
So do you have, is there like a number already in Rossmoor in terms of what needs to happen, what you guys feel need to happen in terms of ADA compliance right now?
yes,
Okay.
we have collected the data and we don't have it in front of us today, but we can share that with you.
I would love for you to share it with Mr. Mendoza when you have it.
Okay.
And take a look at it, and then we would share it with, our residents too. And if there are, and you're asking us now if there are additional areas that, the community feels that need enhancement or things that are broken, to bring it to your attention.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And did you leave like brochures or pieces so people here know how to communicate with you?
Yes.
Okay, because I would encourage everyone who is here, both physically and watching, go out in front. If you see a raised or a crack, now is the time to get it fixed. And the only way to get it fixed is to let these people know.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Again, we have all their contact information. I'm sure Mr. Mendoza can reach out to these folks, and certainly they brought us the QR code to where you can just upload pictures and comments. But any questions? You can come up so we can hear you. Only because this is a presentation, since you're here, might as well, if you have a question.
Hello, my name's Diane Rush. I'm a longtime resident of Rossmoor, and I do have a question about the curb ramps. A neighbor of mine recently had an accident. She fell on those so-called safety bumps, and she ended up having a brain hemorrhage, and she passed away. And when I used to convey my father around by wheelchair, I had a terrible time going up those ramps, especially the ones at the shops at Rossmoor. They're really hard to get a wheelchair up, if anybody's ever had that experience. I hope you find another way of designing those so that they're not so rough. Maybe have the grid going just in one direction, not having the bumps, because they're really hard to walk over and drive a wheelchair over.
Yep, and they're all over the...
Yeah, and do you have any response to that?
So I believe the references to the yellow truncated domes that are on the screen right now in the middle portion. So that's also, I think earlier in the slides we talked about specific requirements from Title II, and there's federal and state and local standards that we'll have to follow. So that's one of the standards to account for all types of different disabilities, including visually impaired, and that's the reason why that's there. That's the current standard, so we can look to see what other options are there, but that's really what's driving that design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a long history over that, for those yellow bumps. And this is coming from the federal government. And again, people I talk with LA County about this same ADA there is a lot of pushback from residents just like you that are saying, it's hard to walk over. So we'll see. The problem with doing this is that it passes the federal government, and now, you see these yellow bumps all throughout the country. And then if they make a change, then you're going to have to rip them out and change them again. So but yeah, I certainly hear your concern, because they are kind of hard to go over. Well, gentlemen, ma'am, thank you very much for coming to our meeting. And please feel free, those data points here in Rossmoor, we would be very interested to see them and see what you're seeing here in And if you could just share them with Mr. Mendoza, that'd be fantastic. And if there's any new assessment funding, if you want to come back to our meeting, by all means, we'll make time for you guys. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our next one. Mr. Mendoza, why don't you do the introductions?
President DeMarco, members of the board, before I introduce Justin Kirker, I need to take a minute to give a shout out to Boy Scout Troop 642, and I'd like to bring up Ryder Kono. Ryder, can you bring your guys up so you can introduce them? I want to give you a short story here. We had our last meeting here, I believe February 14th or 15th, when we had a kind of an introduction on the housing element. And I got a call the next day from Ryder here who wanted to interview me. Well, quickly I found out I was being interviewed by somebody smarter than me. And Ryder's point was, I want to help. I'm neither for or against, but I want to know how we get the information out, because that's what I hear, that people are misinformed. They don't know what the housing element's all about. So they're here tonight. They registered you. They're ready to help in any way, to pass out flyers, go door to door. He just volunteered his time. So Ryder, I really appreciate it. Will you introduce the guys for me?
Thomas Grayson Schaefer, Noah Sato, Wesley Avery, and Finn Burns.
And your name?
Ryder Kono.
This is Ryder Kono.
And what's the troop number again?
Troop 642.
Great. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. Okay, moving right along. This is what we're here for, and as we understand that there's a lot of misinformation, misinterpretation, and a lot of rumors going around. So I invited the Orange County Planning Division Manager, Justin Kirk. Justin is an expert in this area, and mainly towards unincorporated districts, and he will give you a brief presentation and answer any questions. I want to thank those of you who sent questions in beforehand. We did receive a number of them. We passed them on to Justin, and he'll try to hit those points, but he will give you time after to ask questions. Justin? Justin, you can go either way.
Do you guys mind if I go over to that one?
Sure. Perfect. So you can see the audience.
Yeah.
Is that where you want them, Joe?
Yeah, you can take the mic.
Yeah. There you go. Welcome.
Thank you.
And remember, Mr. Kirk is an invited guest. Invited guest.
All right. Again, my name is Justin Kirk. I serve the community as the Planning Division Manager for the County of Orange. Our area of review is limited more to unincorporated areas of the community, such as Rossmoor, North Tustin, the Canyon areas, Rancho Mission Viejo, and areas of Codo and South Orange County. We do not provide planning overview or services to incorporated cities, such as Los Alamitos or Seal Beach. So a lot of what I'll talk about will be somewhat generic and general to housing law within the state of California. Some of our process and some of the discussion will be more restrained to the actual county's efforts themselves. So just as a quick overview of the housing element itself, this has been a piece of state law since 1969, where the state has required local communities to adequately begin planning for development. Now, this is a required chapter of our general plan. We have to plan for housing units in a reasonable and accommodating manner. It is the responsibility of the private sector or developers to actually fulfill those needs. So a lot of what we plan is mathematically oriented based upon what is identified by the state as our responsibility within the unincorporated areas. Now, we get housing numbers through a number of different economic categories, ranging from moderate income, affordable, or low income, extremely low income, and there's now a new category of significantly or severely low income. We have to plan for units not in just one category or one bucket, but having a diverse amount of housing through that. Additionally, we have to provide goals, policy, programs, and quantified objectives to meet that. And what that really gets after is not creating adverse barriers to allowing for this type of development. A lot of these goals and policies and programs are restatements of state law that have already been passed and municipalities have had to implement in a non-kind of official capacity. This process of our housing element does require that. It becomes a challenge because policies at a local level may not align at a state level. And so that's some of the issues that we're faced with now, is that the state is asking for policies and programs that the elected officials at the Board of Supervisors aren't supportive of. So we've been trying to work through some of those issues, but we have not been able to achieve that goal. And that is our final point on this kind of element, is that this is not something that is uniformly approved by the county. This also has to be approved and certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development, otherwise known as State HCD, where they do a thorough review to ensure our housing element is compliant with state law. So the first step in our process, really, of our housing element is this aspect of the regional housing needs assessment. This is something that is identified at a state level, then they begin to focus it at a regional level, and then once they identify the regional housing needs, they then the state then turns to associations of government. In this region, it's a Southern California Association of Government, SCAG, who then goes through and further breaks down that requirement of housing by community level. It's meant to increase the housing supply because the state of California has identified there is a deficit in housing, which has led to an increase in homelessness and a unaffordability of housing at a number of levels. It's meant to promote infill development with a lot of air quality related issues. Building out communities in the traditional suburban approach hasn't been environmentally considered the most friendly because you're creating significant vehicle miles of travel. So this is, again, a policy that's been implemented at the state level to try to promote infill development. They also want to promote inter-regional relationship between jobs and housing. So where you may have a condition, well, we do have a condition where the Inland Empire along the 15 corridor is producing a significant number of housing units, those residents are having to drive into Irvine, Santa Ana, Anaheim, or Los Angeles, thereby putting a certain number of cars on the road, and those produce a certain amount of carbon emissions. So that gets to another point of that infill relationship. Again, this is a state program that they've implemented in vehicle miles traveled as an assessment. They want to allocate a lower proportion of housing needs in income categories and jurisdictions that have a disproportionately high share in comparison to the county distribution. What does that mean? It means not creating stratifications of communities, having integrations of various income levels living in together. Again, this is another state program that they have pushed down to the various municipalities. And this largely sums up into affirmatively furthering fair housing as the state defines it. Our document and the Regional Housing Needs Assessment and the housing element itself is a planning goal, not a building quota. So the state has said these are the numbers we need to build, but they're not telling us that we have to build them. I know that seems like a misnomer, but a lot of what the state wants is to gain voluntary compliance for communities to build these and accept these responsibilities as opposed to creating a compulsory program. As the state progresses, there is fear amongst a number of planning officials that it's going to go from a voluntary to a compulsory program in the near future, and we're beginning to see this through other forms of state law. I know the in vogue topic is now the builder's remedy. The builder's remedy has been on the books since the mid-60s, so it's not new law, but we're beginning to see that strip away some of the limitations of what the builder's remedy allows for municipalities to review a project with and change that further. So as I kind of described already, we get the numbers from the state pushes those down to SCAG. The county then has our final regional allocation of 10,406 units. This is approximately 4,000 or so units more than the fifth cycle. And we did file an appeal. because as a built-out community, it's difficult to plan for 10,000 residential units, especially when the state takes into areas of the county such as the Cleveland National Forest and says, well, you should provide housing. Well, that's a federally protected forest. How do I build houses in somewhere I can't? And there's other issues that are related in our canyon areas where there is not adequate system capacity or supply for water or sewer that limits the ability for development. And these are all the sorts of local constraints that the state has subtly eroded through the state law and policies. Again, we've talked a lot about kind of getting to the housing element and that RENA process, but what I wanted to define here is what is the housing element? It's a planning document. It is not an implementing document or a project-specific project, i.e. a development or entitlement. So we do not analyze sites specifically what development would look like or the environmental impacts. We are just identifying sites that have a capacity for that housing. It provides that framework for where and what potential development may look like. But again, it's a policy of what we kind of see as a potential opportunity. And it again, it establishes goals and objectives for implementation. These are creating and reducing barriers to development of housing at these various economic levels. As I stated, it is not a project-specific item, so we do not have that level of detail for what a site would look like, but we can reasonably assess based upon mathematical calculations. This is not a commitment from the county to assist in housing development. So what does that point mean? It means that the county is not obligated to coerce or make compulsory programs for local property owners to develop consistent with this policy. We're not obligated to provide financial incentives, although the state would like us to, and we are not required to meet those numbers. Again, as I previously stated, this has been a steady progression in an incremental approach to change some of the state laws, and that incrementalism is going to continue while as communities aren't building out these total number of units. So it's not going to get better unless there is a heavy lobbying effort at the state legislative level, and that would push legislation in a different direction. A lot of these things serve as a pendulum, and sometimes that pendulum shifts so far to one direction that it takes a lot of force to push it back across to that other element or other side. Again, as I kind of discussed previously, this is also not a mechanism to provide housing funding. We have other programs for that. This is really getting into a mathematical equation of saying where can we put these 10,000 units based upon the available land and what types of regulatory impediments exist or shouldn't exist to facilitate that development. And the biggest point I wanted to make here is projects need to be proposed by property owners. So the county will not go through, and that was a number of questions, through use of eminent domain nor purchasing of land to do this. This is our planning document where we're saying if a property owner has the wherewithal and interest to develop, this is a manner in which they could develop housing units. Our process, we are currently on our fourth draft. This has not been an easy process. Between the fifth and sixth element, there have been significant and substantial changes in state legislation pertaining to housing that a lot of communities, specifically built out communities that are not on the progressive side of the political scale, haven't really accounted for, and we're trying to work through that. HCD has reviewed the document twice. We're currently going through their second round of comments and seeing where we can implement further changes. As someone who does not create policy, it's challenging to recommend changing policy. So we're having to work with the Board of Supervisors as to what policy they feel is appropriate, because what the state is asking for us and what we see from the board in terms of previous policy direction is relatively incongruent. So we need to work through that and figure out, and the term we usually employ is, what is the minimally amount of compliance necessary to pass state muster? So that's kind of where we're at. Once we go through and we do receive HCD's review and findings of it being substantially compliant, we then have to go through 2 rounds of further notice public hearings. The first being at our Planning Commission, where they will make recommendations on the general plan amendments and corollary land use element changes if necessary, and then the Board of Supervisors would finally adopt. Once you would actually begin to see any change is when an implementing project would be proposed. That requires submittal from a property owner, so I have no idea when that might occur. It's an economic decision by that individual property owner, but what will occur is an entitlement review process that incorporates independent analysis on environmental review, and a lot of concerns with development relate to how this project will fit with the existing built and open environment or natural environment, and that is reviewed and assessed through the California Environmental Quality Act, as well as regulatory compliance through our county's state rules and regulations through our zoning code, building code, and other and traffic code. So just quickly, status. These are the dates. We filed our first draft to the state on October 28th of 2021. There was numerous corrective activities associated with what we got back in the first letter. It almost took a complete redraft and redesign of it. What we did, as many communities did, was we basically took the fifth cycle, updated it to match what the new rules and laws were stating, new numbers, and the state came back and said, oh, no, that is not nearly enough. You need to begin to start implementing these more policy level changes. And that's indicative where we now are sitting, where less than 50% of the county's cities, as well as the county within Orange County, have approved and adopted housing elements. So it is a challenge, not just for the county, but also for other cities as well. And we're currently working on the second comment letter. It's a bit more challenging as they're coming forward with more progressive policy assessments and recommendations. So we're struggling with an appropriate mechanism to respond, and we're working with our county council and our CEO's office to have those discussions in an appropriate fashion before moving too far forward. So one element we did have approved, which was required with state law, was the changes to our land use element. The land use element provides densities of development within our communities that would provide a map for development to get us to that place. Our specific area of change that we implemented was our Housing Opportunities Overlay District. The Housing Opportunities Overlay District has been in place since 2006 and overlays but does not change the zone of commercial and industrial properties. So I know that sounds wonderful. What does that really mean? It means if someone's operating a commercial center today, the rules of the road don't change. This just creates another land use type that might be appropriate for that site. Why did we look at the Housing Opportunities Overlay District to increase that base density? We did not want to change single-family densities and dwelling or capacities of our single-family communities. So rather than going through and saying, well, we have 20, 30,000 homes, well, why don't we start lessening the requirements of single-family and having more multifamily? Why don't we look at zone sites that are typically adjacent to regional transportation corridors, higher densities of vehicular traffic, and may not have as much further or future use. In addition to these commercial and industrial properties, there's a number of faith-based uses that would be included in these lists, and a lot of times we're seeing churches in different congregations diminish. Those are active redevelopment sites for residential. Our next steps, we do have an upcoming draft for a 2-week public review period. I'll circulate with Joe the links for that. This is all online through the county's website, as long as all of the documents that we have. And that is your vehicle to communicate to the county is in this process. Because you may think you're communicating to just us, but we incorporate those comments, and that creates rationale for certain actions within the document that are then forwarded on to HCD. So they don't see it as just myself or my team as planners making these recommendations, but this is additional further public outreach from communities, hearing what they're saying, and making informed decisions to how the document actually takes shape and looks. So we then will submit back to HCD for a 60-day review, back to the Planning Commission, and then back to the Board of Supervisors, which we hope is by the end of this year. And with that, I think that I've talked quite enough. I apologize, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. I have a list of questions. I don't know if someone would like to read those and I can answer them, or if the board would like to answer the questions that they had provided. I'm happy either way.
How many questions did you have, Joe? Were there some that you feel are more important than others, or you want to just go through them all? Okay. Okay. No.
I have an email here from Adele O'Connor. Hello, as a longtime resident of Los Alamitos and Rossmoor Highlands, I do have a question. How will the utilities and water be provided to more development?
So at this, as I kind of communicated, we don't have development-specific level review because we do not have specific developments. As a general statement for any and all development, there is a requirement to obtain what is referred to as a will-serve letter from the local water provider and wastewater provider. That water letter, and also you're probably going to need, in certain communities, Edison approval as well as gas approval through this review. So that will-serve letter is going to cover two elements. One is system capacity. System capacity means the pipes within the roadway are adequately sized to provide static fire pressure to meet minimum fire code requirements for new residential units. That also means there's a minimum pressure to have appliances operate in a certain capacity. So that is an attestment from the service provider that they can provide that service in an existing capacity. The second element of the will-serve letter is that they have adequate sources of supply. Each local water supplier has what's referred to as an urban regional water master plan, where they will identify where they have legal rights to specific water. That typically takes the form of importation of water from the California Water Project through the Owens Valley, Colorado River, local sources of supply, which are increasing in Orange County, specifically Southern Orange County, through groundwater extraction, pumping, and other recycling methodologies. So they have to legally say, we have enough water to provide for this type of development. If the service provider cannot make either of those statements or both of those statements, there then needs to be a requirement on that particular development to upsize the capacity of the system and or identify additional sources of supply. So what that means is they have to go to the system supplier, identify if A, there is enough water and there's enough water to get to them. A lot of water suppliers with importation being an option, as well as groundwater increasing and recycling of water facilities increasing, it's not as hard as we once thought and think.
Mr. Kirk, let me ask you something. So what was the number you put on the corner of Catella and Los Alamitos?
It's 70 units per acre.
So what's that? What's the total number?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Is it like 600, 400, 200?
I want to say it's between 500 and 600.
Okay, so 500 and 600. So I guess, so let me I'm going to, impose my question over that. So 500 to 600 units, do we have enough water capacity and utility capacity right now to support 500 or 600?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh.
Because that would be to the actual specific water supplier to address that. We're not saying that that will actually be able to accommodate 500 to 700 units. It's what's legally allowable. It's incumbent upon the developer to solve that question.
Where did that number, so go into where your number, 500 to 600, on that corner, where did that number come from?
This number, 10,406. What we had to do was a site survey analysis of all properties within unincorporated county areas that either had the potential for development or redevelopment, and identify based upon current densities what that number would look like. That was the first part of the analysis. So that looked at our communities in South Orange County, Rancho Mission Viejo in particular, where they have a number of large-scale residential developments that can occur. So we began to stratify that based upon the income categories that were identified. Once we got to that number, we then started to look at what are our other developments that we have. There are a number of smaller but mid-sized developments in the San Diego and Majeska Canyon areas that might have capacity to provide additional housing that's all market rate or greater housing. We then looked at other areas of unincorporated land that would either be underutilized or potential for redevelopment, and that's where we started to look at the housing opportunities overlay. Is that based upon the limitation of land and base development, what did we need to do to get up to meeting this number? And that number at that minimum level was 70 units per acre, not just for that corner, but for all industrial, commercial uses within the county.
Got it.
If I may, if you're getting text or somebody's trying to get a hold of you, we turned off Zoom. We had some undesirable hacking going on. And so I've gotten a couple phone calls and texts, and so it's down, and we're not going to turn it back on. So FYI, okay?
And just to let everyone know, this is being recorded. It's going to be on our YouTube channel tomorrow or the next day. Oh, great. So it's being live streamed on YouTube right now? Okay, so we're being live streamed on YouTube right now. You just can't comment like you can on Zoom. Go ahead, Carolyn.
A question from Patricia Moore. She says she's looked for maps online and hasn't been able to find a definitive site map available that shows exactly what and where higher housing density is being proposed. Is there one available?
Yes, it's on our county's website. It would be the housing opportunities overlay map. We'll provide with Joe the links to all the map locations. There's one consolidated landing page for all of our housing element related items. So that will be the singular link that will show all the documents, maps that we have, figures that we have, as well as background information and links to who to make contact to in order to provide comments as well.
Great, thank you.
I have an email here from Rod Crane, who cites different areas where he anticipates much congestion based on the number of units he has read about being proposed. He's many. Rod Crane.
Well,
I was trying to say intersections, many intersections that he cited about congestion.
Rod, come on up, we want to hear you. Since your question's in the email and you're here.
You seem to be addressing only the County of Orange, the unincorporated portion. Can you hear me now?
Closer, just closer. There you go.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. You seem to be concentrating strictly on the unincorporated area. We are impacted by the city of Los Alamitos, the city of Cypress, and Seal Beach. When I go through the totals, I'm running about 3,000, a little over 3,000 units. It's being dumped onto Catella and Los Alamitos Boulevard. Directly across the street from your proposal there at the intersection of Los Al and Catella, city of Los Alamitos is parking 227 units, another 80 units just there at Wahoo. City of Seal Beach is parking 400 units behind Sprouts, I believe it is, and across the street at Target is another 200 units. When I total them all up, it's a little over 3,000 units in this immediate area, and probably an awful lot of them are heading down Catella, trying to get onto the 605 freeway, which necks down to only one lane, either northbound or southbound. City of Los Alamitos has already proved that they can't sequence these traffic signals, and their biggest source of revenue, probably for the city of Los Alamitos, is that traffic citations they're giving to this community for trying to get through Catella and Los Alamitos Boulevard. I don't see how this possibly works. And another item that you haven't addressed is the number of parking stalls per unit. You've got 70 units on a 1 acre site. How many parking, what is the requirement for parking?
I I think this is working. Our typical parking requirements are for a two-bedroom, or I'm sorry, yes, for a two-bedroom unit and higher is 2 parking spaces, 1 covered, 1 uncovered, plus 1 additional 1 1/3 open spaces. It goes down to 1 covered space or 1 open space for single units or studios. With that all being said, the state of California has identified if you're within a half mile of a transit station that provides regular service in half an hour to 15-minute intervals, a local jurisdiction cannot implement minimum parking requirements on affordable housing developments.
Explain that again?
If you're within, let's just say, a bus stop.
They got a bus stop there. Well, we have buses.
Wait, let him answer, let him answer.
It's a regional transportation system that provides frequency of service at intervals of 15 to 30 minutes. So if a bus comes within 15 to 30 minutes by that bus stop, pursuant to state law, that is a regional transportation corridor, and as such, if a development is proposed within a half a mile of that area, a local jurisdiction cannot require parking for affordable projects.
So, briefly then, the project that's here within Rossmoor area, 671 units, doesn't need to provide any parking?
I can't answer that because I don't know what the unit type would be. I don't have a
You
development.
said we don't need to meet the minimums.
But that's for affordable housing.
It's all affordable housing.
Not all in that unit is not all affordable. There are moderate income units that may be made available. And so that's why we don't have that detail, is we don't have a project proposed. That overlay has existed for almost 17 years, and that site has not been developed to date. A lot of that has to do.
Wait. What do you mean it's not being developed?
Hasn't been developed.
So Rod, they put a number, 670 units, okay?
Yeah, I found that on his website. He's not aware of it.
But this is just a parcel that is a proposed unit because the state's making them put a number on it. No one has submitted a project yet. So it depends on how the developer presents the project. Is it going to be 30% low income, super low, low, medium low, high low, whatever low, the state defines, based on what the project, what the developer produces or gives to you guys,
The county.
is what the parking requirement's going to be. He's saying that on some of these, well, on all of these, if it's close to a bus stop there is no requirement, just on parking,
Right.
But there still is requirements on water, utilities, all that stuff. But the state of California is saying, no, the parking you can have, I'm telling you, in certain unincorporated areas, it's 0.5 parking per unit, okay, for low income, right? Because they're close to a bus stop or whatever they've defined, in terms of parking. So don't get hung up on the parking. There's other things that can, again.
The reason I bring up parking is behind Montecito there, the units are parking
Yep.
into the local residents' front yards or on the street. Wallingspur is already backed up, but you can't get out of it. Now, if we're only going to have half a car per unit, where are they going to park?
I think the question would be the first development that gets okayed, okay? Let's just assume that there's going to be a project submitted and let's just say it gets approved. Will that project then impact the second project in their environmental and the impact? Or are you looking, does the County of Orange look at all of just because it's in another city, it's going to impact Catella and Los Alamitos. Do you look at that in the environmental study and, the potential for an increased traffic or?
Yes, we identify that regional road networks are not limited to the boundaries in which we have land use authority. So if it crosses into another city, we will reach out to that city, get specific unit counts for what is an existing approved but not built units, what exists in the tax rolls from those units, and then future expected development proposals that would lead into a combined cumulative traffic impact analysis.
And I would imagine Los Alamitos would do the same thing if our corner's developed first, and because our corner would impact their corner. Their parcel that they've designated X number of units.
I can't speak for the city of Los Alamitos,
Again,
but yeah.
you're in this field, that's the way it should work, right?
Should is a very good word to use.
Okay.
So first of all, remember, Justin is just the messenger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we all have a right to be very, very concerned, angry. This is, we don't need more excuses to leave California, but here's another one that's coming on board. This is nothing more than central Politburo planning from Sacramento.
Yep.
And to suggest, and Justin, I know this isn't your fault, and I'm not blaming you, but you made a comment like something like voluntary compliance, it's not mandatory. But let's be clear, there's a reason why the state of California is currently suing Huntington Beach, because Huntington Beach has had the courage to raise their middle finger and say, we're not gonna comply with these ridiculous housing mandates where basically Sacramento wants to take away local control for us to make the determination of what we think we want and we need. And to even suggest that somehow the homeless problem is because there's not enough housing and we just need more affordable housing is ridiculous. We need to look at, first of all, there's a housing problem because of the taxes in California. There's a housing problem because of the regulations in California and because of the environmental impacts that are necessary anytime you want to build anything. So you have a right to be upset. You should be here. You should be complaining to the County Board of Supervisors. The County Board of Supervisors, in my opinion, should be organizing the unincorporated and incorporated areas in Orange County to push back against the state government, not looking for ways to comply and force affordable and other housing down the throats of the incorporated and unincorporated areas of Orange County.
Yep.
We're going to get 3,000 plus new tenants, and there's not 3,000 jobs in this location, so they're going to be traveling somewhere else. This traffic is a disaster.
Yep. Thanks, Rod. Next question.
We have a comment from Julie Miller suggesting that the Supreme Court will be the ultimate step that holds any hope for stopping these projects in close proximity to Rossmoor. What are the steps preceding to this step?
Did you hear that?
Yes, if I wasn't qualified to answer on legislative items, probably less in the judicial form. I think it would be following and exhausting all administrative options or opportunities. So that is when you see a development project get proposed, you would make comment on the potential incompatibilities with that development from an environmental construct and working your way up through that. You have to get in early in that process so that you are found to exhaust all your administrative remedies rather than waiting till the last end of it.
And Mr. Kirk, you mentioned that about the comments. So, I have written down here. So what, in your opinion, would be a good comment that in the past, historically, that you've seen a resident, constituent, make a comment on projects like this that is impactful, right? In terms of something at your level that's going to be, you said you collect them and you use them to do what you do.
The best comments are objective comments that can provide a weighed and measured approach to a problem. Traffic is a good example of that. You don't want to speak too much with emotion because that'll drown out the factual basis of your statements and will make a statement that will be very overwhelmingly supportive or negative to a project lose its actual validity because of that emotion that carries the way. So what works the best is you get a very factual, I like to say, and not very many people get this reference any longer, but Joe Friday from Jagnet, just the facts, objectively asserting the position and points that you feel that a project fails on. And then amplifying and reiterating those points at every inflection point through the process. So you're going to get an inflection point perhaps with a environmental document. A notice to proceed is the first step for an EIR, which is an environmental impact report. You will then get a document circulated for public comment. A notice of comment or completion will be provided. And then you'll go through the public hearing processes where you will have a number of opportunities to provide public comment through that process. You want to start in a more general but still objective form, amplifying and getting more specifics through the process so that you get a crescendo to the final decision maker that exploits and explicitly asserts what objective points you find are not supported in the conclusions and facts of the project being presented to that decision maker.
Got it. Next question.
Will the business properties along its commercial corridor, Catella and Los Al Boulevard, be rezoned high-density housing without planning for relocation of existing businesses and compensation?
I know it's nuanced in a land use term to suggest an overlay district is different than a rezone, but legally it is. Those businesses can continue to operate without any legal non-conforming status as the underlying commercial zoning and designation and general plan designation remains there. When an individual property owner would propose development, that would be a discussion between that developer and that tenant to compensate potential loss of revenue or whatever it may be. Again, that would be dependent upon an actual development project being proposed. And a lot of developers are not willing to tear down perfectly good shopping centers that are probably the highest and best use of that land in terms of economic return on investment.
Yeah, but once you put 70 acres per acre, or 70 units per acre, okay? Again, I don't know what the fish company makes a year, but 70 condos, 70 whatever, might substantially outweigh whatever the net revenue is for that property. So just by doing this, you're drastically increasing the value of that property, and it becomes now a new highest and best use, right?
Potentially, but to get to that 70 unit density, they're not going to be market rate units, so you're not going to get the same cost return on them. And it is still in a very expensive operational bonuses and density allowances that restrict what types of rents and what types of rates you can charge. So while we say 70 units, it may not be the best use of the land. We've reached out through the process to a number of developers, not on this site specifically, but in general. Is 70 a unit something that would really spur a lot of interest? We didn't get a lot of positive feedback on that.
From who?
A number of our nonprofit affordable housing developers, the people that do this type of work. It's starting to bleed into an area of construction costs being too high at that density, and not being able to charge market rate rental prices diminishes the ability to achieve a return on investment because of the higher cost of construction.
What are other county density per acre? Do you know of any? Like, what's LA?
Oh, I don't know what LA is. I think Santa Ana has an up to 90 unit per acre density.
Okay.
And I think in Irvine, they're around that. But again, it's a base density that then has density bonuses that trigger both at the state level and local level to build additional units beyond the minimum density.
Got it. And only because Dr. Barkley brought this up, are you aware of any of the Orange County Board of Supervisors discussing any kind of litigation to stop this process? I mean, you're on your fourth round. How many rounds are you?
So similarly to how I addressed exhausting your administrative process before proceeding into that, that's kind of what we're doing right now. And there are other ways of self-certifying a document that then it's not quite to the extent of a lawsuit, but you self-certify and now you say, we are not choosing to voluntarily comply because we have identified our housing element as meeting state law. You tell us how it's not and compel us legally to change our housing element further. It's a difference. I know it's a minute difference, but that's somewhere where we're at now. With some of these policy level changes that are being requested as we begin to have those discussions, I don't know if that discussion from the elected level will change, but that's kind of where we're at now. Is the policy we've heard is, try your best to minimally comply and the state's coming back saying that's not acceptable, we need to have a further discussion before we move forward with further changes.
Is the state, is there bills right now or laws that have been passed that apply to church property about the housing element in terms of differences between commercial use and church property use?
I may answer this a little bit differently. There is a law referred to as our LUPA, which is the Religious Protection or Religious Land Use Protection Act by the federal government. I may have the acronym wrong, but that protects religious uses from being improperly impeded upon by local land uses. So we can't overtly regulate religious uses. So traditionally, they are commercial or conditionally permitted uses in almost any designation of either residential, commercial, or industrial.
Okay, so I was referring to the ease at which a church can convert their land to a housing element that is easier than a commercial property.
No, they're treated one and the same.
Okay. So your department's going to treat them the same thing. The developer comes to you with a plan, and it's initiated by the landowner.
Yes.
And it's the same way.
Yes.
Okay, and it has to do with the capacity and all the things you're talking about. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Both Seal Beach and Los Alamitos city councils voted to overrule the ALCU findings. Does this put people at risk or impact the county project?
I don't understand how it, let me answer it maybe differently. I don't foresee how the independent actions of two incorporated cities would adversely affect the county's project, or the county's housing element. We are not a party to that objection. When we took our element to the Airport Land Use Commission, they found it compliant.
Explain excess rezoning other properties for high-density housing and how general fund will be able to pay for additional per capita population increases.
So distilling that comment out, it would be how would the county provide general services to those developments as they proceed. There would be no granting of funds by the county unless there was some sort of grant program that we would be working through of general fund revenue to develop the sites potentially. But operationally, maintenance and costs like that, again, through the environmental review process, there is a review section on impacts to municipal services that we're required to review. And a lot of times with housing in general, we will require there to be annexations into community facility districts where the underlying property owner pays to offset the cost of those increased costs. With affordable housing, that's less of an option. And so that would be a part of the negative impacts that would have to be addressed through the approval of a project. And that's a decision that would have to be made by the Board of Supervisors at that time.
And that would be another good comment to state every step of the way, correct?
Precisely.
Okay.
Will there be project labor agreements for represented labor or skilled trades?
Legally, the county cannot compel developers to enter into such agreements. It has become a very popular tool by labor unions to use the CEQA process to get those types of concessions from developers. And there are pushes from CEQA attorneys as well as other environmental groups to change the laws to allow for that. But currently, that's the avenue they approach.
How will the county guarantee that public service response times, fire, ambulance, and police response times will not be reduced due to all the potential new traffic congestions?
Again, and I hate to sound like a broken record and be repetitive, but it's the development review process that will look at that actual project, assess from the growth-inducing aspects, what is the impacts to the surrounding community, and what are the mitigation measures necessary to offset those impacts.
Okay, that pretty much covers all the questions we have. I had one, Justin, and then I think our president's going to open it up. The Quimby Act and the park land use, I guess, quote, how you would make sure that was lived within when you work with these developers?
So Quimby is either a parkland dedication requirement per unit and per population increase and/or an in lieu fee. Those programs would remain the same. And for predominantly market rate housing, a lot of impact fees that are typically associated with market rate housing are diminished and reduced through affordable housing, again, through state legislation. So if it was a market rate development, the Quimby Act would be fully complied with. Affordable housing may have some diminishment based upon the restrictions to not overburden the costs of certain types of development.
Okay. All right, I got a number of people that filled out cards on this subject, so I'm going to call my first one Kevin Pierce. Do we have another microphone, cordless back there? Oh, you have one. Never mind, never mind.
Got
Sorry.
a sparkly one?
Sorry.
You have a sparkly one for me? No?
No,
Okay.
just a dull one.
I just have a comment and a few questions. Director, or President DeMarco, directors, well, thank you for having me. You had mentioned earlier that the regional housing needs, RENA, has been around since the 60s, but hasn't it just recently changed, which is making all of this possible?
The housing element requirements have been in place since 1969. The current RENA allocation was generated prior to the start of the sixth cycle, which would have been in 2020. They reassess prior to every housing element update cycle what the new regional housing needs are and then distributed those down. When we updated our plan back in 2012, 2013, our number wasn't 10,406, it was closer to 6,000 units. So they further increased it based upon the state stating, and that's the Department of Housing and Community Development, what is the demand by region and what is the SCAG, our Southern California Association of Governments, methodology to determine the fair share.
Do you by any chance know the RENA numbers for all of Orange County, or are you just privy of the RENA numbers for unincorporated?
That information is published online through the
Just
SCAG.
for this group?
Yes, we are aware of those numbers. We're focused on accomplishing our unit numbers, but we are aware of the impacts to not just the county, but the
Do
incorporated.
you know that number?
Not off the top of my head.
It's a lot.
Yes.
What is the number, Kevin?
I don't have it exactly. That's what I was asking. But, there's so many cumulative effects of this all of these RENA numbers on Orange County. It's going to be a disaster if all of these projects are built. So that's why we need to push back. The time frame for all of this to be done, I've understood, is 9 years to have everyone's plans in place and start development.
Each cycle is approximately 9 years, so usually we'll start the process a year before adoption of the new cycle is to occur. You then have an 8-year cycle or window that covers that area. We have not built the unit count from our 5th cycle nor our 4th cycle. And that's part of the cumulative impacts that we're dealing with, is that even though we've planned for that development to occur, the private sector hasn't come to the table and built those units.
Okay, thank you. Are there any portions of Orange County that are exempt from RENA?
Not that I'm aware of.
I know Marin County has an exemption until 2028. Why cannot Orange County get an exemption?
I'm not aware of Marin County having an exemption. We can take a look at that. There may be a limited exemption, but all counties in the state are required.
It's in the paper. An exemption in 2019 budget trailer exempts until 2028.
I can take a look at with the specifics of that, but I'm not aware of a unilateral exemption.
Okay. And then also you had mentioned when you're talking that there's no incentive by the county to put in any of this housing, but there's an article that was in the Orange County Register that, I'm trying to pull it up. It shows that just in the last Orange County Board of Supervisors meetings that they allocated 60 million. I'm trying to pull it up here. Bear with me one sec. Yeah, Orange County expands access to 67.1 million in funding, and 210 project-based vouchers for supportive and affordable housing projects. And that was,
That's not identified in the housing element, and that was also not a component of incentive. That is us allocating our block grants and other grant funding that we receive to meet other state requirements for homelessness and other outreach efforts.
so this has nothing to do with
With
this housing?
No.
I have no more comments. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Kevin.
Oh, wait, one last thing. I'd ask you onto the side about planning and going forth to the state about different areas having liquefaction and problems with the earth, and they don't address that in any city plans, not Los Alamitos plans, not Seal Beach's plans, and have those been addressed in the county's plans? Because Rossmoor, Seal Beach, Los Alamitos, West Garden Grove are all subject to liquefaction.
We would not have reviewed that at this level. When an individual development is proposed and the specific parameters are reviewed, consistency with our building code, which addresses liquefaction, is discussed, as well as what type of remediation and grading would be required. So that's a project-specific requirement, not necessarily an area or general plan requirement. We talk about it in our safety element where those areas are and the mitigation towards that, but at this level, we wouldn't address that. It would be a project-specific.
Yeah, from what I understand, there's no grading remedy to liquefaction. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, next up, Frank Marchese.
Good evening, Board. I just want to say, as I agree with Dr. Barkey, what he had to say about the whole situation. I'm from a real estate development family, and what's going on here is it's way too many cars on Catella. You want to do this thing on the corner, it's outrageous. It's just way too much. You know, anybody who lives around here don't want any of these things. You know what I mean? I don't know where you live, but, you know, I live right here, you know. I'm from a construction family, and I know how the game rolls, you know, and they build stuff, they work. It's really a mess what's going on with this. Whole thing's a mess. You're overdoing it. It's not your fault, but it's a mess. You're going to ruin the community. These people work hard to have a nice community. Then the governor is saying, no, we're going to put buildings everywhere, and everybody's going to sit on top of each other. It's disgusting, and it's a tragedy, really. I agree with what he said. You know, people, you got to. It's not fair what they're trying to do to everybody's investments, their homes, and their neighborhoods. It's a disaster. It's terrible.
Thanks, Frank. All right, next up, Dan Brandt, I think. Dan, there you go. Dan.
Good evening. Thank you, Board, first of all, for having this meeting and bringing this gentleman. Appreciate you coming, too. I know you're kind of having to sweat a bunch of questions.
I had to do this last week in North Tustin, so it's a circle tour.
So, first of all, question. So when I was looking at the housing element, I believe that site was broken up into parcels rather than one 670.4 units. So my question is, let's say a developer wants to come in. Of course, they might not want the fish company because that's producing revenue. But there's a church there, there's Polly's Pies, there's different locations. Am I correct? Is there different parcels so they can just, we're going to develop that one parcel that maybe is underperforming?
That is correct. There are a number of parcels. A number of agreements with developers require there to be parcelization for ownership of an individual parcel. So you'll see Chick-fil-A as well as In-N-Out will have their own parcels subdivided. Mm-hmm. Other tenants don't necessarily have that requirement. And there may have also been at the time of development a decision to subdivide into different tracts. If the individual property owner of any one of those tracts were to elect to develop, they have the legal wherewithal to build residential.
Do you have any parcels are in that 671.4 units?
Not off the top of my head.
I think there was like 6. I'd have to look. But I believe there was like 6 individual parcels. And I don't know if I think it might be one owner, but they're individualized parcels. So that's kind of the thing that people need to be concerned about is when we talk about the fish company, we talk about these different things, we talk about And when you talk about, you've talked to developers, I've talked to developers on the other side. I mean, you could look at the Lamson project or the West Ed project. You know, they're doing they're proposing 77 affordable housing units with 100 parking spots, because there it's where they got the then it's bonus. They cut back the setbacks. They get one parking spot for a 1-bedroom, 1.5 for a 2-bedroom, and 1.5 for a 3-bedroom. And just so people are aware, a 3-bedroom you can put between 4 and 7 people in there. So that's just something for people to consider. Secondly, they have the market rate housing on the other side, which is another 160-something units. So they're finding it valuable, and they paid a lot of money for that land. They're finding it valuable. So because they're not having to do parking structures, they're not having to do underground parking, anything like that, it increases their ability to develop these properties.
We don't allow for market rate or moderate rate housing, or I'm sorry, we don't allow for market rate. Moderate rate is included when they hit a density bonus requirement through the state. So if we look at the 7 units that we're allowing on site, we don't allow for any market or moderate rate. They can invoke through the bonus law for providing a certain number or percentage of affordable units, that number of market rate. But again, that would eat into that number and diminish that.
For example, they donated 2 acres of this, of this 12-acre land. Said, hey, the developer gives that to the affordable housing person, developer.
Mm-hmm.
They develop it and they get free reign on the rest. That's kind of my understanding of what's happening there. And they have KB Homes who's going to come, has a contract with them once that's passed through.
We would not allow for that sort of situation to occur, because it would have to be an integrated development in order, with the affordable component of it, to trigger the moderate rate income housing component.
Is that an Orange County thing, or is that?
That's a housing opportunities overlay kind of program. Level detail. What you're describing may be something different, where that land is in a different zoning capacity, either mixed use or residential, that the city may have different legal requirements and density bonus requirements that got them to that place. But for the parlances of the county, the housing opportunities overlay doesn't work in that similar dynamic.
Okay. Just some information for the board. I think you've answered a lot of them and done your best to tiptoe, and
I apologize. I hate not being able to answer questions.
So, I mean, I hope people are aware of the Old Ranch project that the scoping process just went through. Also, 115 units that are going to make, from what my understanding, right turns only onto Seal Beach Boulevard, from Seal Beach Boulevard to St. Cloud, and 51 senior affordable living, 25,000 square feet of medical office building, 150 room hotel, 3-story parking garage, on top of the cumulative effects of the West Ed proposed project. So I just, I appreciate the people coming here, the forum that's here. I know there's a large group. I was ignorant to a lot of facts till about October. I didn't know what a housing element was. I didn't know what arena number was, what SCAG was, all these things. And that's why it's good that people are out here, and I hope people find their neighbors and tell them the same thing. Because when LaSalle had the scoping hearing, nobody had any information on it until 12 days before the comment period was done. So, my thing is, to the county, hopefully, they'll learn from some mistakes. At LaSalle, we went to that city council meeting, had about 120 people there, because people were upset that there was the 500 feet that they put out information from the project. That's not enough. That's required by law.
That is correct.
But as we know, Rossmoor and the county puts out more information. We're pushing Seal Beach to put information about the Old Ranch project out to Rossmoor, because that impact is going to be impacts into this community also, as well as Seal Beach and Los Alamitos. So I'm not going to drone on about a bunch, but I appreciate you guys being up here. I hope the residents here see a bunch of yellow signs and they get one, because there's other cities out there, Manhattan Beach, Huntington Beach. I've heard of Yorba Linda, different cities that are really pushing and getting involved. There's our neighborhood voices that are people are coming together, because we need to push that pendulum back.
Dan, where are those signs?
In my truck.
When do you bring some in, Kevin? Oh,
So the organization I know about is POCnow.org, which is protectourcommunitynow.org. That's working with Seal Beach, West Garden Grove, Los Alamitos, and Rossmoor, because you're not going to be able to get any pushback until you get some regional effort to say that it's unreasonable that we have a 2 square mile military base, which you have, surrounded by 605, 405, arterial roads that there's no cut-throughs for emergency services. The hospital at Los Alamitos does not have enough capacity. Emergency services is going to take an extended period of time to get there. The citizens of Leisure World need to understand that they're going to be completely impacted. So I haven't heard a lot of Leisure World residents come out, but I think it'd be very important if anybody's watching or they're hearing that they understand that every minute that it gets impacted from them to go to Leisure World, to Los Al Medical Center, that's understaffed and under capacity. That's just some of my comments. I
Now,
appreciate
Dan,
that.
so again, you're peeling off all these very important arguments, and to what Mr. Kirk was saying about, when I asked him, what's a substantial argument, and every step of the way, you're checking them off, right? I would ask that you share what you just said to Mr. Mendoza, so we could also share impacts to the community, because you're doing them. I know we're on video. We can go back and watch it, but hospital. You named a whole bunch of them. Very, very good ones, and that's the kind of non-emotional responses that we need to get to our elected leaders and tell them. We can call every single one of them in the state of California, but they're the ones that are passing these laws, right? So I want to ask you, just because you were at a meeting we had a few weeks ago here, so in Los Alamitos, and again, these projects are going to affect Rossmoor. What projects have been proposed? So none have been proposed on our corner here. We just have this number of 672 floating out there, right? 72 an acre, whatever, but there's nothing that's been proposed. Have there been projects proposed on Lamson?
So, what I've heard, because, when you talk to them first, it's like, there's no proposed project, we don't have one. That's what you hear a lot of, which I understand because there's not a final project. Has to go through the EIR, CEQA process, all of that. So the one that, piqued my interest was first the Lamson project, right in front of Arbor Park.
Yep.
Right, so, and I'll give real quick, grew up in this community, moved to Long Beach, figured out I didn't like the density there, right, didn't like the quality of life, moved here for the quality of life. When we saw that, and we had 12 days for a 30-day comment period, that's when we had to get together. So there's that project that I spoke about with the developers, that the affordable housing, and we're not against affordable housing, that's the thing. Our community is not.
But there's a developer that wants to develop that property.
Correct.
Okay, and has he pulled, has he done the first step to where?
Well, then they're in the draft EIR process right now. So
So Lamson, that parcel, okay, in the Los Alamitos density plan, that layout, because I was watching Los Al meeting as well. So Los Al is way beyond where we are right now. We just have, hey, there's this parcel here with 679, the numbers. That Lamson is further along, right?
Yes, yeah, so you got Lamson, that's the furthest along right now.
Okay.
You have Seal Beach, you have the Old Ranch project that just finished their scoping period. So they just finished their comment period for the original draft EIR scoping. They had their scoping project meeting, and you had 30-day comment period. That just passed.
Let me just stop, just so the audience understands. So that's the project, the scoping project for the golf course.
Correct.
Right, okay. The Old Ranch Country Club, where there's, what is the proposal?
I'm going to say
What are you hearing?
approximately, because I can't remember, it was like 115, 4 stories high.
Hotel.
Yeah, no, that's the apartments.
Oh.
Between basically St. Cloud to Lamson. And then you're talking about, I think it's 51 senior affordable living units, or senior living, I'm not sure if it's affordable. And then there's a 3-story parking garage with tennis courts on top. There's 150 hotel room. So, and I think they're relocating their pool into their parking lot. That's the information I have. It wasn't very clear and laid out. We asked questions at the scoping meeting whether there was going to be right turns only from the 115 units, and they didn't really have an answer. They said, well, there's not all, those details aren't all worked out yet. Well, that would, I told them that'd help me figure out how do I ask questions regarding the EIR, but couldn't get an answer on that.
And certainly on public comment for this project, for any of those projects on Lamson, of course, a resident from Rossmoor can submit comments to the Los Alamitos, just like Mr. Kirk's saying you can do it in LA County, right, or Orange County.
Absolutely.
Let me see if I have any other question. They mentioned, and again, I'm just bringing this up because I watched it on, and I would ask, everyone should be in tune and aware of the discussions that are going on at Los Alamitos City Council. And I believe that the February meeting is online. You can watch it. But I know their planning people were stating that the project from start to finish is about 30 months. I don't know which project so they were suggesting that if a plan came in, it would take about 30 months. Yeah.
Yeah. When we first talked to them at their scoping meeting, it was somewhere around, they said somewhere around, I believe, like July, where they would have their draft EIR, which they would then submit to the city. The city would then counter it, or you could probably.
So in general parlance, the city is the lead agency of the CEQA process, so the document would be prepared under their direct or general kind of review. So what typically happens is you will hire a consulting firm that specializes in that work. They will actually prepare the document. There will be a concurrent review by an internal staff member, either a consultant or full-time equivalent, to review that document to ensure it meets legal and performance requirements for that particular city.
So that's actually a question, because once you get into this stuff, you're in the weeds. There's so much.
It's confusing.
So we're saying the draft EIR that is done by because the consultant is hired by the developer in this case.
In that case, yes, but it would still.
So then it goes to an internal staff member.
Yes.
Then the internal staff member makes that decision to send it to city council?
No, what will happen is that an internal staff member will review the document, will typically pull in county council or their legal counsel for review as well, prior to that document being distributed for public comment. Once the document's distributed for public comment and response to comments are then generated and modifications to the document, that is typically taken by the lead, which is the CEQA consultant for the developer, with the city reviewing that again, with the totality of that evidence being brought to whomever their decision maker is for scheduling for public hearing.
But they're not hiring like an outside consultant, usually the city. They're doing it internally.
Most of the time they will, dependent upon the degree of sophistication or potential legal challenges, they may bring in a specialty consultant to handle that under their direct purview.
So like example, if like the draft EIR was done by the consultant that was the city manager at Los Alamitos before, they may have some questions on that.
Perhaps.
That's just a comment.
All right.
In, my opinion, it's an issue, but.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Helen. Helen. There's Helen.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
A lot of heavy information here. Mr. Kirk, you're our guest. I give you credit for coming alone.
Oh, no, I brought an unwilling co-conspirator. She had to come with me.
The information that you share, you don't have to answer this, but on your own time, we know it's not realistic. We know it's not sound or reasonable. think on your own, with your own backbone, if you think it is. But kind of with that aside, you asked for facts, and I have some that will kind of have things look a little differently, asking why is this even taking place in the first place. So with that said, the timing and the rush of this high-density housing brings great confusion to all of us. In September of 21, Newsom put into law what started out of concern, a shortness of a housing crisis. What's interesting is, what does a housing crisis mean here in California? Let me ask you, with the recent release of the latest census of July of 22, 700,000 people moved out of California. 700,000 more than moved in.
More than that.
And now, more than that. So we're now over 100,000 a year are leaving. That doesn't sound like a housing crisis to me. I may not be the brightest mathematician, but I do counting, so I can do a little bit of the math on this. The second thing is, as a result of the COVID lockdowns, more people, thousands of people, are working remotely. That doesn't require a housing issue, does it? Not my math calculations. And it looks like that is here to stay with a lot of remote working. Another thing is the birth rates have definitely dropped. People are holding off and choosing not to have kids. That's not a housing issue. And just as importantly, California, as one of you have mentioned, their business taxes are crazy. A lot of our businesses are leaving. If our businesses are leaving and they're talking about we need to have people close to their work, there's no businesses to even work because everybody's left the state. Sorry, that's not emotion. That's just like getting a point driven home. But on that, I don't know if you realize with a little research how this plan even came about. Apparently, Newsom's plan is based on a plan by McKinsey and Company report that is planned to have California duplicate New York and New Jersey. We definitely are not living like that here. It's not what we want, and it's not who we are. So on that note, people, this doesn't have to happen. There's more of us than them. We can do this peacefully, but we need to stand up. Please pass the word. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all I have on this subject. Anyone else? Anyone else want?
Hi, good evening. I live on Montecito, right behind Sprouts, so the 400-unit apartments do concern me. But I do have a question, because you're pushing affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing. How can Cypress get away with the luxury apartments that they're building by Costco? There's no affordable apartments there. They're all luxury apartments. And then a huge hotel. How they'll be full, I never know. But I am concerned. I'm concerned especially behind Sprouts, because that will affect me. The water table there is high. Our garage leaks constantly, and it's an underground garage. So they'll say, oh, they'll put parking underground. Well, I hope they're prepared to be flooded, because we get flooded all the time, and it's not even raining when we get flooded. So that's a concern, and how do we, I mean, I read about this meeting, and thank you very much, in the newspaper, but I had no idea about the the golf course program, and you're right. I mean, I work at the hospital, okay? We are a comprehensive stroke center. That means we get strokes from other hospitals because we can treat them differently than they can. With all this other new congestion and parking, traffic, it is going to be, again, a minute is brain. So that's something really to think about when you add a bus stop as a regional center. I don't think so. Thank you very much.
That's a great talking point. Anyone else on housing? Do you guys want to wait until I close public, or do you want to ask? Because I know Jody wants to talk about another subject on public comment, but do you want to?
Are we still in public comment?
We
or-
are still in public comment, so you want to listen to all the public comment on any subject?
Might as well.
Okay. All right, Jody, come on up.
Thank
Hello.
you, directors, for having this very informative meeting, and Justin Kirk, who speaks better than most of the professors I ever had, so bravo. This is something fun, and I just wanted to share with you that Rossmoor Bike, there's an actual Bike Rossmoor group. Nia Hartman is spearheading that, but we had a really fun full moon ride on this last week, and it's something that I really encourage everyone to come out for every full moon, and we all show up at Rush Park with $5, and Nia talks to us for about 10 minutes about riding safely, and it's just really cool to be riding down Montecito with the full moon, going to Polly's Pie and having some pie and then coming back. We had a nice turnout, and I want to invite each one of you to come. The next one is going to be April 6th, which is a Thursday at 7:30, May 5th. Great end to Cinco de Mayo celebrations, 8 o'clock. June 4th, Sunday at 8 p.m., and then July 3rd at 8 o'clock. So I hope you attend, and it's just really a great community event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jody. I got one more. Yes, yes.
Justin, that he would somewhat get him out of here early. Are we still going to entertain questions by the board for him?
Yeah, yes.
Can we
please.
do that now? So he.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So I got one more. I'm going to put on hold the public comment, but just in terms of time for Mr. Kirk, Director Searles, any questions?
Justin, good to see you. I serve on the Development Processing Review Committee, which Justin is one of the key staff members, leaders of, and so we discuss this every month. Justin, can you kind of share, I didn't see it in the process, of what the rezoning would look like for this commercial industrial becoming housing? It didn't seem to, is there a barrier to that, or is that a kind of pretty quick, yes, we put you in the housing element category now, we're going to give you a green light for changing the zoning?
So there was no rezoning proposed. We implemented an overlay that's been in existence. So all we did with our land use change is change the density allowed within the housing opportunities overlay. That housing opportunity overlay was originally adopted as part of, I believe, the fourth cycle update, which was in 2006. So that has existed on site with varying degrees of density. Previously, it was 43 units an acre. We've rezoned or modified that to 70, so that would be kind of the limitation. I don't know if that answered appropriately.
So the overlay means that it's already qualified for allowing for housing?
Yes, we were very considerate of not rezoning those properties and creating what are referred to as legal non-conforming uses, otherwise known as grandfathering those uses in, because we want to maintain the viability of those commercial centers. But we still have to plan for residential development, and that's where the overlay comes into play.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin.
Not a problem, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned the state HCD
Yes.
as an agency. Who are these people? Is this like LAFCO? Is this a group of appointed people? Is this a group of elected people? What's the nature of this group that's mandating and not approving reasonable plans? Who are these people, and what makes them gel?
They are a state-appointed agency with the predominant number of their staff being on staff or hired full-time equivalents. So it's a governmental agency at the staff level. I believe the head of the HCD is appointed by the governor's office, but the actual operation, no different than like the Department of Social Security or Department of Defense, has an internal professional staff associated with it. They implement, no differently than local planning agencies, the policy of the elected officials that they serve.
So the director of the HCD is an appointee of a governor, so there's a certain political bias there. And then, is there still a board of directors that govern the HCD?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure on the whole inner workings of HCD. We don't deal with them outside of the housing element too much.
Well, I'm just curious, if here's this all-encompassing, powerful department that has one appointment from the governor, there's other people that actually get to approve or disapprove of your work. I'm just curious how we could find out more about these people. Are they appointed? Are they elected? Who appoints them? For these directors, is it like assemblymen get to nominate people to be on this board? I just want to know what this whole thing's about.
The people that we actually work with are hired staff, so
So there's a
professional.
staff, we have a staff
Yeah,
in our district,
professional.
but yet we're an elected board. But none of these people are elected. Outside, none of them are elected, correct?
The professional staff we deal with are not elected. They are hired or appointed.
So the director is all encompassing power and he is the one?
I'm not sure. There are checks and balances, and the majority of their work is implementation of state law. So they work with the state legislature to implement the legislation that they pass.
Is there any oversight of the state HCD by our assembly or by our senate?
I believe so, yes.
Which one?
I don't know. They have a state oversight.
Okay.
Director Maynard, if I could
maybe.
interject for a moment. HCD is an agency of the state. The director of HCD is appointed directly by the governor.
Okay.
They're not, as far as I'm aware, governed by a board of directors. They answer direct. It's a separate state agency that answers directly to the governor.
Okay.
As
Just
appointee of the governor.
one rotational political director, if you will,
There's-
depending on whoever the governor is.
There's staff, and then
Okay.
there's the actual director that's appointed by the governor.
Okay, so this is part of the state government
Correct. It's a state agency.
Okay, thank you. You had a screen up there where it said what this housing element is and what it is not. Is it safe to say that what it is that wasn't written down could it be considered a slippery slope for development?
I wouldn't describe it as such. It's a planning document, no different than any zoning law.
But doesn't it allow a lot more bypass in the way that you've identified low income or severely low income housing?
Developments, irrespective of income quality or qualification requirements, are still required to go through specific entitlements, irrespective of it's affordable or if it's market rate housing.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Director Shade?
Thank you, Justin, for coming out and speaking to us tonight. I appreciate, and I know everybody else does. You have spoken eloquently, as Ms. Jody has mentioned. I've been to the city council meetings. I've been to several meetings, and along with that gentleman that just spoke up here with us. So I've gotten quite a good idea of what's going on and how it's done, and I've done that in the past couple of months, trying to play catch up along with everybody else, because everybody's got so many questions on this, and now it's hitting Rossmoor on our one and only little area here that we have. So I appreciate you letting us know about the website and how it has everything up there for us and giving us all that information. Just want to say thank you.
Nothing further? Nothing
Nothing
further?
further.
Okay. Joe, you have any other questions, concerns?
No, I just want to, I know we kept you longer than we expected, Justin, but I know
Did you tell him it was going to be 10 minutes?
I told him he had 10 and we were going to give him 10. So he should have been out of here an hour and 45 minutes ago. No, but thank you, and I know you had a little right.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much. Okay. I have one more card. Rob Kapler.
Hello. Hello. I want to talk about pickleball again and the future of this. And to give an update, in the last month, what's happened related to this topic. First of all, the major storms caused a large portion of one of the trees to break at Rossmoor Park. breaking over Court 3, severely damaging the fence and leaving a large amount of tree on the court. And we can only speculate what might happen if sound barrier quilts are on a fence with extra weight on it and there are large storms again. And I think we can only speculate what that might do to the infrastructure there. What has also happened in this last month has been multiple confrontations where people not paying attention to the signs that say use limited to tennis only have been playing pickleball on the tennis courts there and have led to confrontations with neighbors because of their attitude about doing this. Another thing that has happened during this last month is that Bob Unitic, the sound consultant that we heard and saw last time, has appeared on CNN and in an article, to quote him, "It is best for pickleball and tennis facilities to be separate from each other, not to try to compete with each other." And so that was Bob Unitic saying that in this article. The other constructive thing that has happened during this time is the notion of a win-win situation, a win-win alternative to taking away space from tennis or taking away outdoor green space at either of the parks. The idea of using this room that we're in and converting it to a multi-purpose facility that can do sports such as pickleball as well as church events, as well as meetings like this. And I don't have the specific numbers with me. I know that an email has been sent to the board with information, with some beginnings of estimates about the possibility of doing that. But I would ask that you take a look at this seriously, that you think about this win-win alternative and back away from the pressure test. The pressures are growing already with what we've already seen both from nature and from humans in terms of pressures on each other. Let's look at this other alternative to think about some creative, good way of using this space to incorporate that sort of purpose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for a public forum? All right, I will close public forum. Moving on, no reports to the board. Item E, consent calendar. Either
Move
a
approval.
motion to approve or a motion to pull out any.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-0. Okay. Public hearing, none. Resolutions, G1, Resolution 2303-1401, Resolution of the Board of Directors of RCSD establishing mid-year budget revenues and expenditures, total amounts for fiscal year 22-23. Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, sir. That resolution will follow, I believe, H1.
Okay.
But we are asking for you to pass a resolution tonight regarding our mid-year budget adjustment. Do you want to take it now or you want to take it after my report?
Weird.
So H1 is the
mid-year budget adjustment report.
report of CIP and Budget Committees regarding, if you want to start H1 and then we go back to
Yes.
the resolution, let's
Yes.
do that.
Okay.
So now we're on H1.
Right. In accordance with policy number 3020, the Budget Committee met on February 22nd, 2023. The mid-year CIP budget committee, no, the CIP committee met. And the CIP committee is comprised by Directors Barkey and Shade. They went over our capital improvement project list. They had a few recommendations, and I will summarize them, and they can make any comments after I'm done here. One is they wanted to move forward with the canopy project. Plans are done, and they're being submitted to Justin Kirk, as we've talked over the last couple weeks. There are some issues with those plans that he's looking at and will help us through the process. The Rush Park Auditorium flooring, in here, we've met with one contractor so far, and we have appointments with 2 other ones, and we're getting bids for replacing the floor, replacing some of the flooring, some of the carpeting, and maybe making the middle section here a dance floor or a hard surface. And we'll bring all that back to you and to the CIP committee before we move forward. They recommended that we look into installing Tree City USA plaques at the corners of our parks, and we're doing that. Mary, our arborists, have already ordered those, and that's just to make people aware that we are a tree city. They wanted to keep in step with Go Green, and by installing electric car chargers in the parking lots, and we will look into that and have a report to the CIP committee at an upcoming meeting. Research the possibility of fire pits, create dog parks, provide dog waste bags, install a splash pad in the future, make water dispensers available, and put up backstops for handball. So our next meeting with the CIP committee is scheduled for April 12th, and we will have some information regarding those requests. So that takes care of the CIP committee. Yes, sir.
I'm reading along with you on page 30. So going green, dog parks, this is all under consideration for this fiscal?
Well, it would be I'll be reporting back to the CIP committee on how much it would cost, what the alternatives are, and they would plan it for this fiscal or future fiscals to recommend to the board.
Oh,
yes.
okay, so this is more of like feasibility projects.
Right.
So this is just more of a brainstorm
It's a
of
brainstorm,
ideas of what's
Okay.
possible. And then Joe was going to bring it to us to look at the feasibility of actually implementing these things and what it might cost if we actually wanted to do that.
Okay, so it's not trying to get all of this
No.
in 4 months, 5 months, okay.
Moving on, we did have a budget committee meeting, and that's to do our mid-year review. And that was conducted on February 22nd with directors DeMarco and Maynard. The results are attached, and we are asking for a budget adjustment in the amount of, I believe, let me find it here. Okay, we're asking for budget adjustments for water and electricity. The estimated revenues was $129,000. I believe we're asking for an adjustment of $34,000, if I see that correctly. And remember some of the numbers we talked about, and that's to cover some of the excess, I guess, expenditures at Rossmoor Park and water use, Montecito Center, Rush Park utilities, and the mini parks and mediums of water. So by making that adjustment, we will be able to stay within our budget for the fiscal year. If you have any questions, on page 33, there's an explanation of significant variances from budget amounts, and those outline all the, I guess, explanations for revenue in excess or expenditures in excess, and why we are making those adjustments. One of them is tree trimming. We're at 86%, but we don't foresee going over budget because tree trimming season is over, and we're pretty much at our capacity. Street sweeping, we're currently at 28%, but that's due to the contractor not invoicing us on time. Property taxes have been paid, and for the first and second installments. Water increase is due to usage at the parks that I outlined earlier. Recreation, our community events, we have one more that will be starting this fiscal year. I anticipate going about $5,000 over, and part of that is due to some of the entertainment we've been providing at the farmers market, trying to draw an interest in the market. We have, however, exceeded our revenue appropriation for donations and sponsorships, so that'll quickly offset that. Our financial audit has been completed, so we're at 90% or 100% there. Over time, I don't expect going over. We're at 88%, I believe, and we'll stay right there, or we'll hit our 100% mark. So that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Well, I'll just state that I'm on the Budget Committee, and just to do sound bites so it's all easily digestible, we're going to increase or have an increase of revenue of 129K, but we have expenses of increase of 35K. The net result is we're going to have more money to put back into balances and programs. So the whole net here is this is all good. And I even think that some of the water, based on all the rain, our estimates can be off and actually be higher than that. So just think of it as 129 gain minus 135. I'm sorry, minus 35. We are looking very sound for our budget for the remainder of the fiscal.
Good.
Thank you.
Any questions on?
No.
No?
We're
Good? Good?
You're good?
Yeah. Good? Okay. Then I
Can
need,
we go back to G1 and
Yep.
approve the resolution?
yep. So back to G1.
Okay, recommendation is to approve resolution number 23-03-14-01 by reading the title only and waiving the reading as follows. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District establishing the mid-year budget revenues and expenditures total amounts for the fiscal year 2023.
So motioned.
Second?
Any more discussion? Roll call?
Director Barkey.
Aye.
Director Shade.
Aye.
Director DeMarco.
Aye.
Director Maynard.
Aye.
Director Searles.
Aye.
Okay.
As we move forward, there is a budget calendar in the back. Carolyn and I have a budget meeting with our staff tomorrow to go over our 23-24 projections, and we'll be getting back to our budget committee and the CIP committee in the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Okay, let's see, back to H1, I1. Oh, hey, you're back to, that was easy general manager items.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you for hosting this tonight. It was President DeMarco's idea, and I just luckily found Justin Kirk with the county, and he was more than happy to come out and just agree. As you can tell, he's an expert in the field. So, a couple items that I just wanted that is not on H1 is I did get a call today from our new captain, AJ, I forget how to say his last name, and he wanted to come tonight, and I told him, there really isn't any room on the agenda. I don't want to waste your time. So him and I are going to coffee next week, and then he'll be here at the next meeting to make a presentation. Okay? And we will put some publicity out regarding his.
How do you spell his last name, Joe? Do you know?
No, I don't. No. Yeah.
And he is a captain, not a lieutenant?
He's a captain,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. Traffic. Street sweeping signage is still being installed in phase 4 and 5. They hope to have everything done by the latest May 30th. So it's backing up because of the rain and installation. So they still have to do 4 and 5, and I will be talking to the captain about enforcement and maybe stepping that up, okay? But to give a report on that, we're getting very few calls and very few, I guess, residents not complying with the odd even street sweeping ordinance. I imagine there are some, but not to the point where we're just getting, maybe we get one phone call a month, okay? As you know, we did send a letter to Wazoo regarding the traffic study, dated January 12th. You can see it in the attachments. And she replied back and mentioned that first they were considering not doing a traffic study. We did do some communication with them, and she ultimately replied back with a letter or an email saying that They are going to do a traffic study. They are looking into imposing time-restricted parking to eliminate overnight parking. They're looking at red curbs to improve sight distance at intersections. They're implementing road diet in Montecito to add angled parking and bike lanes, so they're looking into that. They're not implementing it. They reduced the 4 lanes to 2, plus a, I don't know what TWLTL means, but on the Montecito with angled parking on the east side of, and bike lanes. The other one that they mentioned was changing Montecito, Shakespeare, and Bostonian circling around Rossmoor Elementary into a one-way streets. We didn't ask for that, so I had responded to her, letting her know that we were in favor of the first 3, but at our traffic committee, we did not discuss that, and we're not so far in favor of even looking at that. We hadn't brought in the school district or anybody else, so I don't know if it's a good idea or bad. But bottom line is, they are conducting a traffic study, which is great, okay? They did mention a couple letters received by RHA and by a resident, and I made it very clear that we are the governing body and we met, and those are the points we wanted to make, and we thank you for doing that, and please stay within the lane here that we described. And she responded back to that also, so you can see that. And her point was, as I pointed out, that our traffic committee is made up of the community. And her point was, well, that's what it's going to take. It's for the community to speak together and to come as one, not as divided. And she says that very clearly. So that's the goal here, and I know we're working on that, so I just want to bring that to your attention, because it is difficult for the county to listen to 20 different entities instead of one. And they want to know we're unified when we're coming with recommendations. So 2 is social media. I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn right now. She's taking on this task to upgrade our social media, and I'll let her give you an update on what we're doing.
Thank you, President DeMarco, members of the board. We're working on ramping up our social media visibility and giving our website a much-needed facelift. Since the beginning of this year, we have had the help of a USC intern in the help of developing and disseminating more eye-catching social media campaigns for our board meetings, festivals, blood drives, farmers market, mulch giveaways, and other events as they present themselves. We currently use 4 main platforms to get our info out to the public. We're using Constant Contact for email blasts. We're using social media platforms which include both Facebook and Instagram. And we're also continuing to use our website, which is in the process of a much-needed facelift. I've got some analytics here for you to take a look at. It's no surprise that we've got an audience growth of an 80% increase in the last month, because we hadn't done anything prior to that too much. So 18 new Instagram followers is an 80% increase. But we're continuing to ramp things up and make things pretty and get the information out there on just about everything that we can get our hands on.
I have a couple questions on that.
Sure.
The person that you have doing this, the USC intern, where did you find her or him?
I'm going to defer to Joe on that. Her name is Shelby Woodard.
There's a USC department head that lives in our community here that I know.
Here in Rossmoor?
Yes.
Okay, that was my main.
And so I asked her if she had anybody she'd recommend. She sent me a couple of resumes, and I talked to those persons, and we went with Shelby to help us.
Okay, and can you elaborate on what type of experience she has with social media? Does she have any marketing, or what was?
Well, she's a student, so she's, through her educational part,
Right.
yes.
So
yes.
is that like she's?
Right, but she's being coached by her mentor, yes.
I just want to, make sure we're getting somebody that's in that realm.
Is it a paying job?
Yes.
Paid internship.
Paid internship.
She also gets class credit for this under some formal program?
Like, is she familiar with the stats? When I was part of the RHA, I took over that page for the RHA, and I pretty much built the RHA to where it is today. And somebody else took over another page and created another one, and it's taken off like wildfire. And a lot of it is engagement and how many times a day you're engaging and how many times a week and doing the post. So it's not just like, I think our posts need to go up in volume, is basically what I'm saying. We don't do enough of them. Can we get an increase on that?
We're working on increasing our visibility as the festivals and other
Perfect.
events become
Like, not even just
online.
but every single day. We don't have to have like an event coming up for us to do a post. We could do a post on a reminder on the weather, on our
street sweeping,
yeah,
time
I mean,
changes.
literally, there's so many. Because I do that in my business, and I've had extensive experience. I do it for the school, for the high school. I've done it for the RHA. I do it for myself. I do it for other companies. So I know the importance of doing consistency and making sure that we're visible out there. And I think that's when people really, and engaging in things of interest, not just, things of concern, the traffic, all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, I want to make sure that that person has the awareness of what we really need as far as to promote the RCSD and our word and what we do.
And I think we would both agree with you, and that's the
Thank
goal that
you.
we're working
Okay.
towards. It is a work in progress.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just checking.
So the data analytics that you see here shows that our audience is steadily increasing every month, along with reaches, likes, and shares. And comparatively, we are in the shadow of our competitors, such as the cities of Los Alamitos and Seal Beach, but we are gaining ground with campaigns that are relative to neighborhood concerns. So that's really all that I have to say as far as social media goes, and hopefully by the end of June, we'll have a new website with a new look and feel and better interaction. I know we get a lot of complaints from the community as far as ease of use and being able to find different things on the website.
Navigating.
I can tell you that the shell has been built, and we're in the process of moving all the current modules over.
That'll be exciting.
So we're making progress on that. Yeah.
Much needed.
And Brea IT is the one that's working with Shelby to help get that done.
Super cool.
Yeah.
That's
Great.
huge.
Great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, moving along. Item 3 on my general manager's report is pickleball. We're going to start pickleball trial program on March 23rd. We have organized our rec desk registration to accomplish taking reservations for those 3 courts. We have sound mitigation quilts going up March 21st. We did purchase a sound mitigation device, and we will be tracking the sound and the impact it has on the community. And we have informational banners that we've ordered, and it will be going up at Rush and Rossmoor Park. The residents on streets within 2 blocks of tennis courts will be receiving an informational postcard in the mail letting them know about the program. And additional signage displaying tennis court park rules will be placed at the entrance of the courts, and that's already been done. Pickleball etiquette, Chris is working on a pickleball etiquette sign, and it's basically tennis too, but it's an etiquette sign for people to take a look at and make sure they're staying within some type of resemblance of working together. Staff members have been scheduled to intermittently monitor pickleball play and usage. To I guess, respond to some of the constructive criticism that we're hearing from residents about people just going on and playing and, illegally because we have a sign up. That has nothing to do with our 90-day trial. They would be doing that throughout the year anyway, because people want to play pickleball. So they're going to go out there and play. My comeback, and I will be contacting the residents, is you're not the pickleball sheriff. Please do not go out there and tell somebody you have to get off, because all you're going to do is get in a confrontation, and that's what's been happening. We don't have staff out there all the time. I'm willing to give them my phone number. They can call me anytime. I can call the staff that's in the area. They can get over there. If it's that big of a thing, call the sheriffs, but do not take it upon yourself to confront somebody out there, because that's all you're going to do is have a confrontation. And again, that has nothing to do with whether we're doing a pickleball state or not. That would happen just due to the demand for pickleball. Okay, so we're ready to move, and we got a full marketing program set for that. We did have recent vandalism at Foster Park on March 7th. A group of kids were lighting the tree on fire in the corner and hiding, and I think there might have been some alcohol involved. And the patrons, that I want to say this, I know their intent was good, but they called Mary instead of the sheriffs. Took Mary, our arborist. So Mary gets out there, looks at the tree, yeah, it's burnt, but the kids had left. And she immediately called the sheriffs, and they responded and took a report and talked to the residents about, please call us, don't wait. That's my message here is to the residents, call sheriffs first. The more we call, the more we're going to get them out there. And we have great response right now. And AJ, our new captain, will give us stats on that. I've talked about that. He will give us response time stats. Okay? RCSD is proud to announce a collaboration with the Los Alamitos Medical Center. We did have a stroke seminar here Monday, and they're planning 4 or 5 more in the next few months on different topics. It's free to the seniors, and there's a box lunch involved, and it's about an hour presentation, and then there's time to sit down and have lunch together. So those will be put out on our social media soon. Rossmoor Park and Montecito Park and Rush Park are all scheduled to have cement walkways grounded down to make sure they're safe as we get close to the summer and more people using our parks. We do that annually, so this is the time of year. Trees, tend to raise the concrete and cause tripping hazards. We fertilize and aerate it. We aerate it this week, and we will fertilize next week at all of our parks, and that's part of our Brightview contract. And then just a reminder to the board, the 22-23 budget is budget calendar is attached. Please make sure you mark your calendars. And that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mendoza on his items?
Joe, you were talking about the flooring project earlier in the CIP. I know we did get some emails about whether indoor pickleball might be an option. I don't know if that's being explored as far as the floor surface. I just say if we were going to try to put pickleball in here, that we not get a floor and then want to replace our floor with a pickleball floor. So I guess my statement would be is as you're getting bids, getting the cost of, if pickleball were feasible, and I don't know if it is, but that's just a question, I guess, to have in your mind.
I can have some information, and we can review at the CIP committee and bring it back to...
in the committee, for the committee to discuss. And then, looking at the calendar, if we start pickleball on March 23rd, I don't think we would have a Parks and Facilities meeting before our next meeting, in a sense of following up on how the pickleball is going. Mm-hmm. But I think it should definitely be between that April 11th, I think is the next meeting. Yeah, April 11th. So somewhere between April 11th and the next meeting in May, we should have a Parks and Facilities meeting to talk about how pickleball has gone in that first 35, 40 days, wherever that fits. I know that can be a challenge to get our schedules together. I think that's mainly it as far as the things you were discussing, Joe. So, yeah, thank you.
I actually do have a question as well. we all got that email regarding the pickleball and the suggestion of using this facility as a multi-functional, you know, I was kind of thinking like that could probably just not even be a possibility, but I think we need to keep our minds open as to that thought, because if you really think about that, I think it's a really good idea, and it's something we should probably consider as a multifunctional facility for this community. It's something we could really use. And in taking in with the flooring, that is an absolute consideration as far as, you know, what we put in here for flooring. We could utilize that in a lot of different ways, depending on the flooring that we do put in here. So cost-wise, we want to make sure that we're being wary of that and able to, you know, bounce into another direction if we decide we want to do that. But for the facility, this building might be an answer to that and to our problems. I think there's a valid point, and we need to consider it and have an open mind when we think about it, because like I said, quite honestly, for me, when I thought about it initially, I was like, that sounds kind of crazy, but when you really think about it, and I know this came up a month or two ago, but for myself, after giving it some good thought, I thought, you know, I go into other areas, other communities, you know, with schools that I go to for different functions and different, they have those buildings that they have and for multi-functions, multi-type things, and it's great. I think they do a really great job of designing them, and I think we could easily think of something like this building for something like that and still keep what we have, the aesthetics. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, board member items. I'll start with you again, Director Searles.
I mean, first, I think I speak for the board in saying thank you to Mr. Justin Kirk for coming out and giving an extremely informative presentation. I think his detail and knowledge of the questions we had for the community were greatly appreciated, and the candidness. I think President DeMarco, you were very good at explaining the action and how to use the arguments to move further into the advocacy, and I think I appreciate Mr. Kirk, you know, reinforcing that and hoping that people will take the proper direction of, you know, objectiveness versus emotion when it comes to trying to, you know, make those arguments. I don't have much else. I will say I watched a lot of garbage get thrown away. As with the farmer's market, I wish we'd have at least 2 cans for our trash here of trash and recyclables at minimum. You know, I appreciate that we have the water available to our guests, and bottled water does work for guests that we have, but then just recycling the bottles would be appreciated on the way out. That's all. I really don't have much. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Meader?
Yeah, I concur. Justin was on his game. Obviously, he is a professional who's been doing what he's been doing. I want to applaud that we weren't shooting the messenger. One thing that was a little bit surprising to me is you have a previous relationship with him?
I serve on a county, it's a development processing review committee.
Who do you represent?
I was appointed by Supervisor Foley 2 years ago for representing a now non-existent supervisory district. So there's still a transition.
Okay. Because that was news to me. Was that news to anyone else here?
Yeah, I did not know that.
I happen to know that most of us, at least I've known that Director Barkey also volunteers with the sheriff, and we use the sheriff I think it would, just being surprised, I was surprised, and I don't think that's the way our board should be. So I don't know if we have a policy or any conduct, but just disclosure of if anybody who's on our board is on another board, especially being part of the county and being unincorporated county. I don't think any of us should ever be surprised. So do we have anything in place that if any of us enter another committee within the county or something that is prudent, that we at least know about it?
I don't believe so. Do you know of anything, Mr. Mendoza? Yeah, I don't think.
I mean, I think that's cool that you got to, were invited from our previous supervisor who did wonderful things for our community. I'm glad that we had a Rossmoor voice there. It's just, I had no idea. And I don't think anyone on the board should ever be surprised like that. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Director Maynard. Director Shade.
Well, of course, I was very grateful for Mr. Kirk coming in and speaking to us tonight. He had some really great things that he informed us all on. The objective points that he was pointing out for us to make sure that we nail, that's important. Like I had said, I've been to, the council meetings, and I've been there, and I've learned a great deal, just attending those meetings and being a part of them and learning exactly how this whole process is working out and what needs to be done and what we need to be doing as residents and board members, and sharing to our residents so that we can help, because there's things that can be done and there's things that can't be done, and it's good to have an understanding of what that is. The objective points that he was mentioning are important for us to remember, keeping the level head and fighting what we can on the environmental, the traffic, the infrastructure, the emergency services are all, the liquefaction, those are all valid and solid points to really drill down, because that's what we're going to have to use as our firing power to try to overcome this issue that we're having. Let's see. I'd like to see us taking part in the bike run. That is a really cool thing that they've started now, and I think it's really cool. I mean, you spend $5 and you go get a piece of pie and you ride over there with your neighborhood. It's a really community builder. It's super cool. And I think that's a great thing that Ms. Nia is pulling together, and Jody promoted it. Wonderful. Those ladies are fantastic. The tree plaques, I wanted to ask, where do we have a location as to where those are going to be? Okay, all right. I'd like to see if we can get one, like all the parks, and maybe the entrances would be a really cool thing. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I think that's fantastic. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director
Thank
Shade.
you, Director.
Director Barkey.
Thank you, sir. I think it's great the community came out on a rainy, random night. I think we need to get involved here, or we're going to be taken over. And a lot of what's going on up in Sacramento is not a good thing. Sacramento imposing their values and their beliefs on us. So I'm glad we're getting involved. I hope we get more involved. It's great to see Dan Brandt in action, smart, organized, and a leader. So he did an excellent job tonight. Just briefly on the SIP committee, we sort of glossed over a couple things that I thought was kind of cool. One is the possibility of a water park at Rush Park for the summer for the kids. I think it could be simple, inexpensive, and fun. So we're going to explore, is that a thing? The other is, of course, we have a policy, an animal policy of dogs on leashes at the park. I get it. I'm not a dog owner, but I understand. For some, they want their dogs to run around. Who doesn't? So the idea of maybe a walled-off, fenced-off area where we could have a dog park. And that may not be a thing, but it might be fun, and it would be very inexpensive, I think. Obviously, there's liability concerns that have to come into play and all that, But I think that might be a fun thing for our community to have a place where they can actually take their dogs off the leash to run around a little bit. So some simple things like that in being creative that doesn't cost a lot of money but might bring a lot of value are some fun things that Joe and I were exploring on the SIP committee. And stay tuned. We'll bring you more information as these things evolve and get vetted. That's it.
All right, thank you, Director Park. I forgot to ask Mr. Kirk. So he said something about not touching R1 zoning, okay? He said something about not touching R1 zoning. So, and they did that, and that's why they're concentrating on these areas like our corner. So I was going to ask him, you know, so if I knock down my house, what could I build? So I'm taking it, I'm understanding that it's still a single-family house, because I know the state well, I don't know. Maybe that's a follow-up question we need to ask. Tarquin, please.
Thank you, Joe. I think this is a little better. So under SB 9, single-family zoning has been much heralded in the press, is somewhat thought to be a thing of the past in California. SB 9 allows for lot splits, which you could ultimately build 2 units plus several ADUs on a lot. As of yet, it has not had the impact on most California jurisdictions that I think people believe that it would have. But for many lots, provided the lot is a certain size, lot splits are an option, as are multiple dwelling units on a lot.
So I heard that same thing. We should have asked him, and maybe I'll follow up with an email, because I want to know specifically. I got a 7,800 square foot lot in Rossmoor. What can I legally do today with SB 9 or whatever law you just referred to? So I think that would be relevant to our community. And again, certainly our lots are worth a lot of money, so single family I would think is still the highest and best used, but you know, you never know. But that's something that, again, just like what we heard today, gets people motivated. They were motivated to come to this meeting, like Director Barkey said, and listen, and you know, they get, I mean, just like the LaSalle meeting, and our crowd was much more calmer, but it's this process of learning, and the laws are constantly changing too. So I think understanding how to play the game, you know, we're a one party in this state of California with a supermajority, so it's very tough to get compromise. But I know one thing: if you make enough noise, you may get some concessions or some change, and people need to come out and get motivated to reach out to their electeds and all the electeds in the state of California, because this is a big, big deal. And I agree with you, Director Parkey, that we are being told what to do, and not, you know, we're just normally, our normal position is the county tells us what to do. Well, now the state's telling us that we're losing our local control almost, but let's see what happens. And it was very informative. Thank you, Joe, for setting this up, building this relationship with Mr. Kirk. Hopefully you know, now if we have questions, just like the one I asked, maybe, you know, we can get an answer quickly. But thank you for that. I know that I've already talked about this, but I still think it's relevant. Mr. Mendoza brought it up, but I want to commend Mr. Mendoza. He's the one that got the very, very important parking study, convinced Wazoo to get a parking study. And I just want those who are listening to this video to understand, and it's not to be argumentative, or it's not to be, to get in a fight, but, you know, certain residents should not come to be part of an RCSD ad hoc committee, be allowed to debate the issue, commiserate and discuss, and then agree what we're going to send to the county, and then send their own letters.
Yep.
Okay, because this is what happens in LA County, and I live this during the day, every day. This is what happens in a large county like where my store is, where you fractionalize. So this is very, very important. Okay, and Joe, in his wisdom, is able to now maneuver. Okay, because Joe is a very seasoned professional and can maneuver around these letters sent by, I don't know who you want to, how I define them, but I don't understand why 2 additional letters were sent, okay? But it confuses the issue, and we have a traffic ad hoc committee that anyone can come to. Everyone's going to be heard, okay? We all agreed at that meeting in December or November on what to do, okay? And yet, we agreed. One of the people who sent the letter, we agreed on the structure, and we used some of his comments, okay? We produced the letter, I signed the letter, we sent it in. 2 other people that were at that meeting sent letters. And it almost messed up the ability for our community to get a valuable traffic committee or a traffic study that we could use to possibly convince our elected Board of Supervisors to give us something, to remedy something, to give us a solution for something. Yet, I just don't understand why they sent the other 2 letters.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's the same thing with what this issue on high density. Okay, so the corner, if something is proposed there, if we're not all on the same page as to what our community wants, 1 or 2 people send in a letter, oh, you don't have everyone's not on the same page, and they choose which ones to listen to. Happens all the time.
They usually choose the easiest route.
Yes, they do. Yes,
which
they
isn't
do.
always the best route.
Yes. And they usually choose the easiest and their opinion route, right? They're the one that they are for, right? Which is, it might be for 72 units per acre. It might be for 678 units on that corner. And I bring this up all the time because it upset me, okay? And it should be, we're doing all of this outside of, we're stepping around, the traffic. It's a big, big deal. We don't have jurisdiction in it. So we have to, and they know that. So the people, if you want to clog this up, they know how to do it. I'm just going to send 3 or 4 different letters. Now, what Joe straightened out was, I believe it's straightened out. We'll see if this happens again, if it is or not, but this board should be the recognized governing body. We should have a little more weight than a resident that just sends a letter. Now, the resident has every right to send a letter, but in this particular case, those 2 residents were involved in our committee. One's on the committee. So I don't understand why, unless it was meant to put a wrench in this, I don't know. But I'm glad, Joe, you were able to convince Wazoo to do this study, because my hope is we're going to get back some possible solutions that are from the county that we can use. And I don't know if it's parking permit or anything like that, but maybe one elevates to where, hey, you know what, that can solve 75 spaces if we do this, and we have a document now that we can go sell. Before, we're just chatter. This has all been chatter. So anyway, it's a big deal to me, so that's why I bring it up a lot, and I apologize for bringing it up, but I feel it's very important that our community knows that Joe does a very, very good job for us, and this could have been, you know, a bad thing that our community of Rossmoor would have lost, which is the RCSD Traffic Ad Hoc Committee asked to do this study, and they were not going to do the study because of one letter, 2 letters. So, okay, I'll move on. The new captain's name is AJ Patella. I want to thank my wife for texting me that. Okay, so Joe, let's meet with. You're going to meet with them. I would ask the board if you want Joe to ask him anything. Joe to ask him to bring any kind of report or to answer any questions, to email Joe because he's going to meet with them. Hopefully he'll be here next month. And we'll go over things in Rossmoor law enforcement.
Can we maybe get him here a little early and kind of do a reception?
That's a good
Sure.
idea.
Yeah, sure.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, we can serve donuts.
Yeah.
I knew someone
kidding.
was going to go there.
Just kidding.
Yeah, of course he's going to go there. Let's see. The budget adjustment, as Director Maynard stated, we are in very good financial health. We actually are making, it looks like we're going to make even more money than what we're budgeted in terms of revenue. That is fantastic. It's been a long-standing direction for this board to be conservative at the beginning of the year, to adjust the revenues from taxes very small incrementally, and then when we get we usually always get more than what we budget, and again, this happened again this year. So thank you, Joe, for all of that and putting all that together. I like your idea, CIP, I like the idea of dog parks. Again, I think even to fence it around is very inexpensive. Let's come back with a plan. I think that would be well accepted by the community. And I know I always forget something, but I think that's it. 9:25. Tarquin, anything to add? Any type of attorney comments? Okay, thank you, Tarquin. All right. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Do I just adjourn? I always mess this up.
Either is acceptable.
Oh, either is acceptable?
You don't need a motion.
All right, I adjourn this meeting.